I've read my fair share of Harlem Renaissance books, and I would say so far I've only read one of Wallace Thurman's, The Blacker the Berry, but I need to read Infants in the Spring. I have it here at the house somewhere. I've gotten so many books from that time period. I try to go back and buy the old hard copies. And I find the Harlem Renaissance nuances more fascinating than the Vogue stuff and the artistic expression, which is why I decided to read Wallace Thurman's short story Cordelia the Crude the week prior. And what I learned in these old Harlem Renaissance books is the way in which black people talked, black people talked and expressed themselves in the United States 100 or more years ago. And one term that stood out in this story that he brought up several times was the term chippie, and he spelled it Chippie to refer to the protagonist, which is Cordelia. When I looked it up, chippie is actually the way it was spelled. Chippie is a 19th century term and a shortened version of the chip on one's shoulder. Because I think what Wallace Thurman was trying to say is that Cordelia has a chip on her shoulder, and based on the story, I think there's two reasons that Cordelia may have had this chip on her shoulder. A girl who was setting herself up to sleep with men and give sexual favors in order to make her own money to survive the city. The first reason is that the guy she liked back home, John Stokes, had a mother who just did not particularly care for Cordelia and did not see fit to have her as a daughter-in-law. So while she would have preferred South Carolina, though that's the Jim Crow era, her mother-in-law did not want her. That's the first and foremost reason I feel like Cordelia had a chip on her shoulder. Number two, I think she found the humdrum of the city to have a lot going on and having to wander around aimlessly. Because you get the sense that her parents had found her to be so recalcitrant that they wanted nothing to do with her, so they left her to her own devices. So in a sense, you got this 16-year-old girl who feels like that she's living robotically and going through the motions, and so selling herself at that younger age instead of getting, as Wallace Thurman said, a respectable job, was her way to heal and numb the pain of what she felt was the rejection of her parents. This story clearly reeks of what we now call the Great Migration, where some people left the South and went to the North. It's interesting that the way Wallace tells this story, Cordelia would much rather had stayed in the South and been the wife of a pig farming, seemingly good-looking guy than to be in the North, giving her body away to strangers. But when you also read into the story, it's clear that the chip on her shoulder is the reason she is this, because he gives lots of unredeeming things that she did to herself, like refusing to go to school, being half illiterate, causing her parents problems, things that this character Cordelia had control of at the age of 16 years old. Now, the thing with this story being her age and stuff, okay, it's hard to know based on this story if Wallace Thurman, because he speaks of himself in the I term, it's hard to know if Wallace Thurman wrote this as if he's putting himself in the position of men, or if this was a known band leader in the Harlem Renaissance named Cornelia Jones. Because there was such a person, but I could not find too many photos of her. Or not Cornelia, Cordelia. Here I am already saying it wrong. To be fair, Cordelia in that time was a very popular name, and it simply could just be a name to represent something that Wallace Thurman saw on the streets. Because we'll get into his sexuality in another video in a couple of weeks concerning this same poem. Not this poem, I mean, in a poem by Claude McKay, and how I'm going to bring the two gentlemen together to talk about the more seedy side of Harlem in a quick video. But I just found that term chippy, the chip on their shoulder, something that was interesting. And I think that Wallace Thurman in this short story conveyed that there was a sect of black women who indeed had a chip on their shoulder based on their treatment up north during the Harlem Renaissance. And in that time frame, and that despite having those few blocks where there was lots of artistic expression, where the black voice could express itself in a different way, that there was still some hurt and some pain and some pretense that had to be shown in order for those black women to get on with life. Well, all right, guys, thank you so much for listening. And girls, please go back and read Cordelia the Chippie if you haven't, before you listen to the rest of this series. Thanks, and have a great day.